Welcome to the Tank Podcast. In this week's episode, artist-filmmaker Andrea Luka Zimmerman speaks to radical shamanic poet CAConrad on their 5-decade career testing the limits of poetic form.
This is my 50th anniversary of writing poetry this year, and the exact date is March 30th. And there's a reason I know this, and it's because in the 1970s, my mother, I'm from the United States, if that wasn't obvious, but my mother was in trouble with the law a lot when I was a child. Nothing violent, it was thieving. She was a miscreant of, minor offenses. But nobody would hire her anymore, so she thought it would be a good idea eventually. She thought it was a good idea to put me to work selling flowers along the highway. And, this was very isolating for a young person. Every Friday after school until dusk, Saturday from dawn to dusk, Sunday from dawn to like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I would just be out there in the middle of nowhere with these buckets of flowers, my folding chair, and what this did for me, since it's the 70s before there are, phones, I became a reader, which is not something anybody did where I grew up because they're all factory workers. And so every Thursday I would go to the library and get a big stack of books, and then I would go out there and read my books. And it was the Easter Sunday. So Easter Sunday in 1975 was on March 30th. You know how that holiday travels for some reason. But anyway, so Thursday before Easter Sunday, I went out to the library and got my stack of books. And when I went up to the checkout counter, a copy, not this particular book, but a very slender edition, like a Dover edition, I think, of Emily Dickinson's selected poems was on display. And the librarian said to me, "Do you like Emily Dickinson?" And I said, "I don't know who that is." And I put it in my pile of books just to be polite. For the most part. And anyway, it was Easter Sunday, and it was the last book in my pile that I hadn't touched. And I wasn't that interested in it, but as soon as I started reading it, it was just a magical moment. Like these gates of heaven opened, and I read that little book over and over again, and I never looked back. And then I ran away in 1974 as a teenager to be a poet in Philadelphia, and it's the beginning of AIDS, so the AIDS crisis is a big part of everything. I don't want to get into all that, but Emily Dickinson was where it all began for me. So this is also my 20th anniversary of working with somatic poetry rituals. Very briefly, as I mentioned about the factory workers, I wanted nothing to do with these factories. My mother didn't either, which is why she was shoplifting very expensive things for us to eat. I do have to say that for her. It really was, like filet, mignon, like these really like exclusive, like big pieces of expensive meat. Anyway, I didn't, the thing is, I lived the way I wanted to live in the city, and I was a writer. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a poet, and it was an amazing time in many ways for that, but also it was just awful because half of everybody I knew died of AIDS around this time. But in 2005, I meet these new friends that are part of an MFA creative writing program, these graduate writing programs. And they are connected inside themselves with their writing lives and the lives they're living in a way that I was not connected. And it didn't make any sense to me for a little while. And then I realized it's our backgrounds. They were raised by doctors, lawyers, engineers. I was raised by factory workers. And the thing is, with factory workers, when you go to work at the factory, in order to survive that job, because you're an extension of a machine for 10 to 12 hours a day, in order to survive being an extension of a machine, you need to shut the present off and live in the past and the future inside of you, see? And they don't know how to flip that switch when they get home, if they ever did, because they were raised by factory workers. So I realized I needed a new relationship with time, which is where these rituals came from. They were to anchor myself in the present. And the first ones I did, I like to go to these big corporate bookstores like Waterstone and don't buy anything, but I use the business section. There's a subcategory in the business section about marketing research. It's this sort of, I refer to it as this new anthropology, like they're studying our behavior, our physiology, all kinds of very things. They're learning a lot of really odd things about us. And one of the things I was reading around this period of crisis, I was trying to figure out how to deal with this, have a new relationship with time. I was reading a side article with part of a bigger piece I was reading that said that researchers had discovered that as much as 80 to 90% of our communication is nonverbal, which I still don't know if I believe or not, but they seem very convincing. They seem, everybody's so sure of themselves in the world. But so I thought, well, how can I use that? And there was a beauty academy down the street from where I lived, in this city where I was living at the time. And there was somebody had, failed their classes, and there was this red wig in the dumpster. I wanted to spend a week. This was the first ritual I did where I would eat a single color food for a day for 7 days. And I started with red. And so I found this red, it was a really long red wig down to my waist. And it was half straight and half really badly permed. So I thought if I wear this wig around town, I'll get a lot of nonverbal communication. And it worked. It worked. It was really amazing how much it worked. It worked in two ways, and I didn't realize it till it was finished that evening when I was bringing all those notes together. Did you need a seat? Yeah, I forgot. I know everybody's so embarrassed here. I don't mean, you don't be embarrassed. Just sit down. You're all right. It's all right. I learned two very valuable lessons that evening, making that first, from my notes, turning those notes into a poem. The first was, it worked. I was anchored in the present. It was probably the most present I'd ever been writing. And the second thing was, maybe more important, that I learned was that poem would have never been written at any other time for any other reason, meaning that the ritual orchestrated the language. And then I went on to do them, like I had, many, I did rituals to do. I do not prescribe to the. That's all right. Phones are a nice sound. To this romantic idea that depression is a nice catalyst for art. I do the opposite. I had a boyfriend who was raped and murdered in Tennessee, and I wound up doing a ritual to get out of that depression. If I have to be depressed to do poetry, I'm going to take up something else, like golf, which I'm not interested in at all. So the Penguin in UK did three of my books. This is a selected. I kind of try to push back against a selected because, it's something they do just before you die. You know what I mean? I don't want to have to think about that right now. But a lot of this one ritual that I did with extinct animal sounds, I'm just going to get into what I've been doing lately. I flooded my body with extinct animal sounds. I lived on the road for over a decade before COVID. It was supposed to be for a year, and I just turned into a decade because I didn't want to live I don't like America that much, and I just wound up living everywhere. And but when I got pulled off the road for COVID, immediately COVID made me think about AIDS and all the people. I don't want to read all these, but I'll read a couple of these. For years after friends died of AIDS, they still danced with me in my dreams. The survivors of the bubonic plague dance with their dead. Who will dance with whom in a year? Let's keep safe, dance together in person. My grandmother Pearl said, throw your wallet away the moment you lose your job. There were many excuses for losing jobs where I grew up. She was the only person in my family in the 1980s who asked about my dying lovers and friends. She said to me after a week with 3 funerals, there is a beginning to this pain. Now you know the middle, but the end too must show itself. When you survive this, love will destroy all doubt. Just one more of these. M drew his face the day he was diagnosed HIV positive and kept drawing until his face changed, as his face changed. They were sublime, like Munch's self-portrait with Spanish flu. He called on his deathbed at his parents' home to say his father was in the backyard burning the stack of drawings. I wanted to make him stop. Please don't, he said. It's his last chance to deny me. How can I deny him that? And then this is the book that comes out of it. I was in the city of Seattle during COVID lockdown. I didn't have anywhere to live because I had lived on the road. And it turns out it's very difficult in America to live somewhere if you've been homeless. Like you just have to remain homeless. I have an apartment now only because I taught for a year at this fancy university and I had a letter of hire, but they weren't going to give me the apartment otherwise. But this is different. So Amanda Paradise was the one with extinct animal sounds. This is the golden boomer. Listen to the golden boomerang return. If you're familiar with the city of Seattle, so my publisher in the States is in Seattle, Washington. And they gave me the little apartment that they use for visiting writers. Of course, nobody's going anywhere. We thought it was going to last a couple months, and of course, it turned into 2 years. And it's one of the Seattle sits right in the heart of one of the largest non-tropical rainforests on the planet, meaning it rains a lot, but it also means that the animals are very exclusive in the way that they develop, and it's one of the largest populations of crows. And they run the city. They run the city of Seattle. And this crow that you see here started hanging out with me and would do this thing eventually where it would close its eyes and lean forward for me to pet their beak. And this up here. And then they started bringing me gifts. And this is a collection of gifts. Yeah, it was quite astonishing, this relationship. And I just work with crows all day long up there. At first I thought I was, the twig that you see there was the first gift, and I thought, I don't know if I'm imagining. Let me just read a few of these and then tell you about what I'm working on now. So these are all from, that's in Nicole. Nicole Eisenman's paintings? I mean, she's brilliant. She had the Whitechapel retrospective last year here in London. It was incredible. That's her painting called Groundsweller. Our first lightning strike was convulsive. We felt sad for our violence after exterminating wolves and bison. We do not need a doctor to say, dance, 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 before the song runs out. Learn how to live so wilderness never becomes mythology. We put them in parks to be wild on purpose. A museum of fur, fangs, and hooves. Part of this forest tastes like the man I love, with an actual number of nails holding the bedroom together. Other days when we died where we fell, we became the forest. My car never intended to be a meat grinder, another face going under the waves. We felt awful after hitting the deer. We made love and slept with one of his antlers between us. I'm just going to read one more of these and then move on to the next part. To desire the world as it is, not as it was. Falling feather attaches to new life. For a moment, when the hammer approached, we thought, is that thing coming this way? We are the fractal. Drop to hear our own harmonics and the muffled underground hum of seeds. And this is last July in Anafi, Greece. I was part of this group of artists called Phenomenon, and we were. It took about several hours to put each one of these on the wall. I just had a show in Tucson at the MoCA. I firmly believe that the poets and the artists have been right for thousands of years about the muse, the ghosts, the spirits. They're real. They're there. We work with them. They're whispering. So I wanted these sculptures of my poems to be the size of the spirits. So they're between 6 and 9 feet tall. This is like from opening night. And we had a reading room. Sequestered in the back. And then I have a show opening in London on May 1st at Shamlakum, which is not far from here, I think. Or am I making that up? It's not far from here. 15 minutes. Thank you, Kieran. Ted and you are coming. This show will be a little different. I'm very excited. Lucy Chadwick is the curator putting this together. I'm going to finish now with talking about what I'm working on currently. First Light, 88 Frequencies. Do you all know who Bernadette Mayer was? Well, if you don't, Bernadette Mayer was a poet who was absolutely brilliant. She laid the groundwork for many movements that we now know of that these men took over and kind of tried to erase. You know how these things happen. And she would tell me all the time, I would be out with her, she's like, you can't trust him, you can't trust him, you can't trust him. They're liars, they're liars, they're liars. And I was like, yeah, I get it. I've seen it, I've heard it. And but she was just brilliant and didn't take shit from anybody. And for Bernadette Mayer, 1945 to 2022, The lightning strike of your genius will forever vibrate in the fertile ground of poetry. So what I'm doing is I'm watching the sunrise wherever I'm at on the planet. This is in Tucson, Arizona. And what I'm especially looking at is, there's, well, of course, there's when the light finally appears, but just before the light appears, your eyes are adjusted when you've been out there in the dark a little while. And so you kind of make out the nouns, things. So the thing is, just before the light comes out, it pulls back and everything vanishes. And that's what I'm excited about, all the nouns dissipating and everything just evaporates. And then the other thing I like is that just before the sun rises, it's dark and quiet. And as soon as the light appears, birds start singing like that, wherever you're at. So it's just song and light. This is where I live. I live in Western Massachusetts now. There's snow. It's there most of the winter, the snow. This is in Iowa, which is a great place to see the sunrise. That's in Ireland. This is a painting that I love a lot. This is Edvard Munch's The Sun. Have you ever seen this? It's in Oslo, and I got to see it a couple years ago in person. It is enormous. It is so massive. They had to build a big, giant building for it. It's like stories high. And what I love about this painting is he gets this light that comes from the sun to our planet takes 9 minutes to travel through outer space to get here. And when it gets here, every single thing he shows you, look at it, everything's vibrating. The air's vibrating, the land's vibrating, the water's vibrating, the creatures everything's vibrating on this frequency. Nikola Tesla, not the guy with the cars, but Nikola Tesla, he says there are 3 things to focus on to understand the secrets of this universe: energy, frequency, vibration. So, like I ate some delicious beans and broccoli and chips earlier, and it gave me energy to move my big mouth, my big poet mouth, the vibration, to send the frequency to you, and then you're taking it in. I think was great, and I feel like this Munch gets it. I'll just finish by reading a few of these new pieces. These are pieces that are going to be in the show at Shamlakum. You are designed to travel from mud of despair to the dance floor. There are no answers not already given to grief. I only near miss you now. Stop slicing between 2 kinds of thinking. Let the solid parts go liquid. Huddled in foyer too long, get in here. Please tell us about the love. Fruit fly born in hotel room, died in hotel room. You think I asked for this dream, spanning an entire known world? I might dance around you if I get a pair of bunny pants. No one can afford to lose love. I have explored the alternative. It is a wasteland. I feel felt by another, but I'm alone in the room. I sing it gets stronger. Feel it on my skin. A letter in the past tense about the future is my latest time machine. You should try it. I lean with motion this way, then that. I am not on a boat. I'm in conversation with a friend who died years ago. They are fine. Have a new job. Everything else is private now. Must end this poem right here. I've been vegan since the 1980s. When all my friends were dying of AIDS, I just became macrobiotic, just doing everything to help everybody try to survive. And, most chickens, almost every chicken on this planet lives less than a year. If they live after a year, they're called a boiler. You have to really, I don't know what the hell that means. Who cares? It's just brutal. But I like to visit these farms where no animals, there's the no-kill farms where they let them live forever until they die. And this was a chicken that can live to be 20 years old, chickens. This chicken was maybe between 10 and 15 years old. And I got to spend, she was beautiful. We were in this field that had gone fallow. Everyone's drawing the death card, the chair pressing 4 legs against a thought. Amplifying Thanatos over our dome of sleep. I met an old chicken, the rarest of chickens. We spent the day inspecting every bit of life in a field gone wild. And I just was before coming over here. I was on the phone with these friends who are trans. My community is really being brutalized. People needed to buy guns to protect themselves because they're being, really incredible things. People losing their jobs because the homeless shelter for queer kids is being shut down. It's just fun. These witch-burning Christians have absolute control of America right now. If you go back into the closet, you're not even protecting yourself. But will America kill us? Maybe. I can tell you about a man I loved, a queer witch burned alive, and the Inquisition is keeping their torches lit in the state of Tennessee. Don't die in the middle of your day. Don't fear the love. Don't you ever fear your love. Let them kill us together. The U.S. government says my pronoun is so difficult to pronounce, patriots are exempt from saying it to protect their stupid faces. They also claim the weapons industry sustains lives and careers. I say irony, and they think I added a Y chromosome to iron and get upset. I asked the character cut from the play if we should kill another character to make room for them to return. They said, but why would I want to give up this freedom? Good for you, I say. Just ask for the password in a dream. Go ahead. Call me a child for asking, is there no war somewhere? Instead of this daily butterfly fighting suck a fan blade. You should break up is my only relationship advice. On the way to slaughter, pigs on truck pass deer with broken neck. Where love is merely an afterthought, we must banish the intrusions or become them. This is the last one. This is the newest one. For 10 years, I lived in my car. People asked, where are you going? I always said, I'm traveling away. The wanderer the road knows, the intestinal trans expatriate. I met a man who feared termites, though his house was made of stone. I wrote on truck stop walls, dear sleepwalkers, every U.S. taxpayer is a weapons dealer. In Mississippi, I touched the pig's heart in a jar. For weeks, I saw other worlds of clover. Could sense the romantic fusion of living and dying in a frying pan. Left with a divulgence, what else is paradise losing if not our trust?
We were thinking about what can we talk about, and I think since there's many of you who I know are also from a working class place, and we don't really, this is something we often avoid talking about, and it's something which kind of underpins everything. We thought maybe we start from a place, because it's so rare that actually two people, and also I come from a sub-working class background too, right? Like I'm a very good thief. Can I just say? I can do very nice meals. I still have the skill, though I don't need it. But I think it's important to not shy away from actually talking about it, because when we feel comfortable in certain places, or certain bodies feel comfortable in some places and others don't, we need to actually on all sorts of different registers make space for that, which we don't know, right? And many people don't make that work unless you have to make that work. And in a way, it goes across different thresholds. And I think what might it mean to make work today, to make work in the way in which you make work, which is so moving to me. And the more when I first saw you perform, I was almost in tears, because there's something in the poetry which is embodied, but is also deeply political, and is deeply claiming a space. It's claiming a space for love perhaps, but it's claiming a space that is full of refusal to be kicked. That for me is very, very beautiful and powerful, and that comes from an embodied experience. And I think what would be nice to hear you speak more of is that you are making work in a certain way, because that work, like how you write your poems, you didn't talk about this now, but you write and write and write, and sometimes you write as fast as you can, and you write even faster when you start to think, and then you start to edit. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about this process, because I think it's a really unusual and beautiful and very empowering and inspiring process actually of because all your practice is also about empowering others and inspiring others, and say we all have to speak. It's not just you speaking, but everybody should speak, and I'm speaking a lot now. But anyway, do you want to talk a little bit about this? Because it's so beautiful, your process.
Well, everybody's creative. You know, there's no such thing as a person who's not creative. And I've been teaching for about 17 years now in Amsterdam. I teach at two different schools, Sandberg Art Institute and De Ateliers. And I love both of these schools, but they're very different. You know, one of them's more like kind of working class, or like, you know, they all seem to have jobs, these students, and their like studios are more confined and together, and they're very communal, and they're always laughing and doing things together. And the other school, which is great, and the students are just fantastic in both, but the other school, they have these big studios, but they're working alone, and they don't seem to see one another as much. And I find that fascinating. It sort of reminds me of when I was a kid, and this is not what you asked me to talk about.
It's like a politician, yeah? No. You just answer what you want, yes.
When I was a teenager in Philadelphia, there was this amazing, well, the thing is that the scene was very different. It's before all these nothing against the MFA creative writing programs, because I have a lot of friends who've been through them, and I teach at them sometimes, and it gives people an opportunity to spend time writing. What they don't teach, though, is longevity of practice. Mm-hmm. And that's where I come in. That's what I do in Amsterdam. I'm teaching these artists how to be artists. I tell them, look, 95% of every artist I've ever known just stops. And that's it. It's over. They never do it again. And I mean almost everybody. And my job is to show you how that is, why that's happening, these intrusions that get inside. People tell you terrible things about your work. And, there are many types of intrusions. I don't know where I'm going with this. Oh, well, okay, well, I'll say this. When I was a kid, there was a very different scene before the MFAs came. I was more supportive in some ways, you know, but, you know, anything could happen to you. You know, the audience was part of the experience. And then once the creative writing, these universities took over with these MFAs, everything got really quiet and serious in the room, and you felt like you couldn't even sneeze, you know. And it was very strange. You know, I remember hearing this one young man back in the early 90s say, well, and he's giving a reading, and he says, well, if you don't have an MFA, nobody's going to take you seriously. And everybody kind of laughs. And I was like, you know, I don't even remember his name or any of the people in the room. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? That's just stupid to say something like that. And because we're all creative.
I really agree, and I think the people who I really, what I need in the world is people who keep going regardless of, and we encourage each other. And I think there's not just the encouragement of each other, but also the knowing that without that, what we do, which might not be remunerated necessarily with a lot of financial possibility, but to claim a space of freedom of thinking through or dreaming other worlds where violence is not the given or the inevitable. Without that, I don't want to live, really, you know. And I think to actually really share that possibility with each other and not to gatekeep it all the time. And I think this is why the structures have to shift and have to change profoundly in order to really appreciate and love other lives that are excluded from this kind of cultural normativity that is being produced, which is actually just part of late capitalist selling things. But I want to go back to your writing practice of how you write as fast as you can in order to not write consciously.
Okay.
I really loved it. So do you want to talk a little bit?
Sure. All right. Yes, I do. It's funny, when I'm in France teaching, sometimes the French are very resistant. I don't know whether it's because I'm American or whatever, but they're like, you Americans, you just want us to do everything faster and faster and faster. I was like, well, do it however you want. Look, this is not written in stone. Like, don't. And then, of course, they're like, we're going to write very slowly. And then it doesn't really work. And they're like, okay, we're going to try writing faster. The reason I write fast is because I'm trying to get ahead of that editor, that internal editor. You know, and because that editor is really great. I mean, we've been developing these editors since we were born. And but the thing is that those editors get in the way when we're writing. You know, you want to get that magical language that's out there waiting. And as soon as my mind starts to go through a thread, an idea, I need to write faster to get ahead of it. And once you get it, you can feel it when you're doing it. Once you get ahead of the editor, there's this sort of cruising speed with the writing, where you're fine. You can just let go. You saw the size of these poems; they're very small, but when I do these residencies, sometimes they get, poets. We're the ugly cousins of the art world, so we get everything last, So like the novelists will get most of these so it'd be like me and then like 7 novelists, And at dinner time, they're just ignoring me and just like bragging about drinking wine and talking about how many words they wrote that day. And they see me out there writing. Now I'm going to do everything outside, They see me writing. And then I have these tiny poems. They're like, what are you doing? And when I tell them that I get rid of like 98% of all the words, they're just horrified because they're busy like stacking it up, And that's it. But, the thing is, it's something to do while you're alive, And... but I've done so many of these rituals now. I mean, all kinds of them. There's so many things that you can do. Endless. It's endless. The creative viability of everything in this room the possibilities are endless, And make up your own. Like I was in Wyoming, the state of Wyoming, which is enormous. There are actually more antelope than there are people in Wyoming. And the thing is, the sky is so dark at night, there's no light pollution, that you see the entire Milky Way. And what I did was I was creating my own star constellations and then making a bunch of mythologies with that, and then took that to make the notes for the poems. It's just endless. But I also knew that these could do other things. I had this boyfriend who was murdered in Tennessee that I mentioned, and I did a ritual to get out of that depression, and it worked. It was quite extraordinary that it did work. We were talking earlier before the event started, and you were talking about, I mistakenly thought you were like talking about like how do you keep talking about these things, and I have a high threshold for all of this talking about violence, not just because I come from America where 45,000 people were shot and killed on the streets last year, which is like a war report, right? 45,000 people shot and killed. Well, the thing is, it comes from the AIDS epidemic. The early years of the AIDS, almost every straight person we know just abandoned us. And we were never more isolated. And so there was so much work to do. Because what are you going to do? Your friends, you're all in your early 20s. Your friends are so sick they can't go anywhere. And there's just so much work to do. And I had this really brazen, amazing dyke friend named Marie Fontini, who she and I would go driving around in her car to give people groceries and stuff before we went to our jobs, our stupid jobs. And I, we had this one week where we had 3 funerals to go to, and I was having a nervous breakdown in the middle of the day, and she'd grab me by my shoulders, and she would shake me with each syllable and say, CA, find your strength. Like she would just happen, and she would put me back inside myself. And I would be like, I'm here. And she's like, yeah, get it together. We have too much shit to do, Cry later at home into your pillow, She was kind of tough, but like we had shit to do, People were counting on us. And I feel like that really helped me be able to just do anything in the world, those years. Not that I ever needed to go through it, but, I feel like that has a lot to do with it. And also prepare me for these evil fucking poets, It's like, when you get any success at all, man, the knives come out. Terrible shit happens. You just be like, oh, really? And then I'm like, do you have any idea what I've been through? Fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what you think. But it's like, it's like there's something about the art world that's like, once you start, like, okay, I started sending out book manuscripts, started writing in 1975, started sending out manuscripts in 1985. My first book doesn't come out until 2006. That's a long train ride I've been on, And I'm a Capricorn. We're like in it for the long game, We don't care. And we work hard and we get success and everybody hates us for it, and we don't care either. And but the thing is, you really need to be strong. I tell this to my students when I'm teaching these classes in longevity of practices. Like, once you actually get what you want, that's when you need to really be prepared for what's going to happen. Jealousy, horrible things can happen. And I don't understand why we need to keep living this way. There are so many people on this planet. We're all creative. We all need to find a way to make room for everybody and have friends, real friends, who are going to support you when you're even in your success. And especially when you're being rejected. You have to be dealing with that or it's going to ruin you and stop you. Rejection stops most people. I had a cork board above my desk when I was a kid in the late 70s and early 80s when I'd be typing my poems, there's no email, and then putting them, sending them through the mail. And when they would write back to you back then, they would say some really horrible things to you. And I would say, fuck you, and big red magic marker. And there was this drag queen that lived in the building. She was older. She was looking out for me, and she gave me her big red lipstick. She was like, here, do this. And it's just like, I wanted to see that over my red fuck you over top of all those rejections, and it kept me going. You need to keep going. You have to be absolutely in love with the work you're doing. You have to love it. And I don't care how corny the word love is to some people. It's essential to be in love with what we're doing. How do you feel about that?
I really love what you say, and I feel even in relationship to everything that I've done, I show love, I think, and I love the people I work with, and even in this short extract of a much longer work that I'm working on, and I don't know when it's going to be finished, but it shows a counter image to what we see, the images coming out of Palestine, which are full of misery, or Mohammed Al-Kurd writes about the perfect victim. What is the kind of idea of a victim in a conflict that we can digest, even in its horrificness, because we are so accustomed to it? And I refuse all of that because I'm trying to look at it through friendship, through love, through the kind of care that exists regardless of all the horrors that are going on. Also, we could focus on completely different images of people still, managing somehow to watch out for each other, regardless of what is going on in areas where there's absolute nothing. And I think to not let go of the capacity of love is a massive, massive journey. I think that's not an easy journey, especially also when you have experiences that are very brutal. And, I have no relationship with my parents or something. I had absolute violence, neglect. I mean, who are they? So it's like how I had to learn what love is. And love came in crazy ways and unexpected ways. And so who is seeing one? And that's what's interesting. And this is what I love also, to go back to your work. Oh, first of all, Shuruk said to me after the war in Gaza started, and we were talking about filmmaking, and Shuruk just said, if we don't have art, she lives in Ramallah, which is now having had loads and loads of incursions also. If we don't make art, what do we have left? They can't take that from us. And I think we have to also remember, what spaces do we make for each other, even dreaming spaces, spaces for listening and spaces for exploring otherwise.
In your film Wayfaring Strangers, it's evident in the way you work with the camera, the love. You've got these people that are, you're never really sure. I remember watching it last year at the BFI, is that where we were? And you're never quite sure when you're an audience member, exactly what's going on. You're imagining it. But there's such care and love behind really showing these bodies, when the dogs as well, in a way that is embracing, no matter what their situation. And also, the material you just showed with the people with the dogs, that was. And even in art class, there's your community. It's very interesting. It's you have this point in that film where you're showing your community that you're with of artists, right? And the thing is, I feel like there's something about that has to do with class right there. Right, everything. It's there's more communal activity going on. Sharing. That was one of my favorite parts of that film. Somebody picking up a flute and playing a flute in the middle of it, and the poets, Stevenson. Just all these great people are in there, and I love the fact that there's something about when you start talking about class and breaking down these barriers, because those barriers are very big barriers that we're dealing with. That you can find ways of being with people together. What do you have to say? You're the maker of that incredible film. How do you put together class and the structure of that and love and care?
Thank you. I think it's embodied. It's why I relate so much to your work. I think for me, my work is really embodied because I do most of the camera work, so I touch. There's a sense of touch. I touch the person, or through the person, I'm putting something into the world that speaks outside. It's like an energy that comes through. But also it's about multiplicity of voices and non-erasure of the differences that we have, but actually each of us contributes something, and I don't want to hegemonize it. I'm not interested in like, let's speak the same language over and over. And when you're in filmmaking, it must be the same in literature, I imagine, when you go to these writing programs, but I also teach filmmaking. I have to undo all the teaching that people have had before, because it's like, if you make a film, you have to do it like this. If you tell a story, you have to do it like this. This is how a beginning looks like. This is how... It's bullshit, because you have to know how a story transports an emotion, or how, what is it that you want to say that's ambiguous, that we don't know the answer, but the person that can watch it will put themselves, is welcome to come inside of that space too. What questions are you asking? And if you already tell us what you know, then I don't need to know it, I feel like. And I feel like this is, for me, what community often does is, or what I seek in relationships, also in every work that I do, is are conversations that are coming from so many different spaces, but somehow we find each other in that space for some reason or another, but something comes out of it that I can't think of yet. So I don't come with a presupposed thing, but I happen to be in that place. It's like, so there's the advanced Elvis course, which is not on the thing here, which I recommend every one of you to read, because for me that was when I so fell in love with your work, because it's about how do we see whom we see. And you use one example in an art gallery where people look at you because you're wearing that Elvis Forever t-shirt or something. And then the people look slightly down, but they're buying their very fancy, say, Tate Modern paraphernalia.
It's a Delacroix show.
Oh, Delacroix show. But I was laughing so much when I read it. It was like, I recognize this. And I mean, it's so full of love, how you approach people and the kind of relationships you form with people. It's incredibly beautiful.
It just was reprinted last year. I wrote that back in the 90s. Started it mostly back then when all my friends were very sick. Yeah, I was at a party, and some like drunken straight guy was like, Elvis wasn't queer. I said, oh, really? What do you think you know? I said, do you know the song Jailhouse Rock? You all know the song, right? Jailhouse Rock? Think about those lyrics. There are no co-ed prisons. You're the cutest little jailbird I ever did see. You know what I mean? Sure would like your company. It's ridiculous, the way people... And he was bisexual. Who cares, Yeah.
No, and I think, so to go back also to why I like your work so much, is because it embodies a fullness of life experience that is not coming from the outside in, but comes from the inside out. And I think that's what's really deeply inspiring to me, is that I feel your poems. I feel something in them, and I feel that I'm welcome too into them or with them. And they make me laugh and they make me think, but they also make me feel I can do it too. This is very special.
Oh, thank you. When I was a teenager, there was this brilliant American poet named Etheridge Knight. He spent time in prison, and he was friends with Gwendolyn Brooks, who was, she was basically like his mentor. And he taught a poetry workshop in the city where I lived called the Free People's Poetry Workshop. It was in a bar. And it was really amazing how, you could go there, and he was the one, all my friends are dying of AIDS. I've got these seriously angry anti-Ronald Reagan poems I'm reading. And he was the one who would encourage me all the time. Keep that anger in there, keep feeling that, and keep going. And it's interesting because, he's teaching this workshop in this bar, and then years after he dies, some of these MFA programs start up in this Ivy League school, University of Pennsylvania, just blocks away from there, where it's costs thousands of dollars to take your classes there, and if you even let you in. And the thing is about these MFAs, which are great in many ways, like I said, but those are communities that are constructed by the program. But originally I was in a community that I wanted to be in, and it was like you could be there if you wanted to be there. And Etheridge was very kind, and he had an ethics of teaching that was extraordinary. And he would bring these poets from South Africa, all these, like Dennis Brutus. I don't know if you're familiar with Dennis Brutus, who shared a jail cell with Nelson Mandela. And, I mean, when they were introducing him, I thought it was the head of state, and it's just like, God, this poet, he's reading his, a poem about Sharpeville, about these riots that happened and this violence. And it was life-changing being around Etheridge and his circle of people, Sonia Sanchez, Lamont Steptoe. But that's where I learned how to, and I learned, like, you can't get up to the microphone and just whisper your poems, so you throw things at you and yell at you. So I went to the library to look, because I couldn't afford voice lessons, to find out my voice range. And I sort of have this sort of heavy metal screechy thing that I do. But I score all my poems with my own shorthand, and then it's just what I've been doing.
And I've also learned not to drink lemon juice or spicy food before a performance, because it really does something to your voice, which is not very favorable when you're performing.
I dated an opera singer for a while, just a little while. And I came back. He never wanted to go to the poetry readings, of course, but I always had to go hear him. And but I came back from this one reading. I said, I couldn't hit these notes. He's like, well, of course, you had tacos. And which he made, by the way. And I said, what are you talking about? And he explained this to me, and I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? He's like, oh, who cares? It's just your poems, But that's how I learned it from this,
So I wonder, how are we time-wise now? 5 minutes. Okay, so I wonder if there would be any questions maybe to either of us. But I wondered if you wanted to maybe say one more or two more poems.
You read another poem?
Yeah, after there's a question. Yes, please.
Well, okay.
Yes, because I love the reading so much. Sorry, and I'm sitting here, so I have the choice.
Okay, so this is from the book Listen to the Golden Boomerang Return. Don't worry, darkness always accuses us of falling on purpose. You know how to bulldoze me back up these hills? What does darkness know of light filling your navel in the middle of the afternoon? We have not lost our place in line, shaking off the cold. Let's get this garden planted. Give our fruit away to one another. Thank you.
Thank you.
To hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is by Himera.